Most people don't regret their venue. They regret the questions they didn't ask. This isn't about taste. It's not about your aesthetic failing you or picking the wrong style. The regret that shows up 6 weeks before the wedding or on the day itself almost always traces back to one thing: missing information. Information you didn't even know to look for. And I want to change that today, because clarity is a form of self-protection in event planning. And you deserve to feel confident, not confused, when you sign a contract. Here's the truth I've learned after years of planning events. The stress you feel when planning doesn't usually come from having bad taste or making wrong choices. It comes from feeling like you don't know what you don't know. You tour a venue, it's gorgeous, the photos are stunning, the coordinator is lovely, you feel the excitement building, and then you sign the contract. 3 months later, you find out there's a noise curfew you didn't know about, or that your florist can't hang anything from the ceiling, or that day of coordination doesn't actually mean what you thought it meant. That moment, that sinking feeling, isn't about regret over aesthetics. It's about realizing you were never armed with the right questions in the first place. So today, I'm walking you through the questions most people don't know to ask before they book a venue or a vendor. Not because you're supposed to be paranoid or difficult, but because asking the right questions is how you protect your budget, your timeline, and your peace of mind. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to ask before you fall in love with a space, so that when you do commit, you can do it with confidence and clarity, not blind hope. Most regret isn't about bad taste, it's about missing information. Let's start with the biggest misconception about wedding regret. You don't regret your venue because it was ugly. You regret it because nobody told you about the $2,000 cleanup fee. According to research on wedding budget regrets, 80% of couples say their biggest financial surprises came from unforeseen add-ons or things they didn't think to ask about upfront, not from overspending on things they loved. When I talk to clients 6 months into planning, the stress is never, "I hate the aesthetic I chose." It's, "I didn't know I'd need a generator," or "I didn't realize my caterer couldn't use the venue's kitchen." Regret in event planning usually isn't emotional, it's logistical. It's the slow creep of, "Wait, this costs extra?" Or, "I thought that was included." One client of mine fell in love with a barn venue. Rustic, beautiful, exactly her vision. She signed the contract that day because another couple was touring it that weekend and she didn't want them to get it. 4 months later, she found out that the venue had no climate control. Her July wedding in the Inland Empire, in a barn. She ended up spending $3,500 on portable air conditioning units, money that wasn't in her budget and a cost she never saw coming. Not because the venue was hiding it, but because she didn't know that was a question she needed to ask when she was touring back in January. This is what I mean when I say regret is about missing information. It's not that you made a bad choice. It's that you didn't have all the data to make a fully informed one. And the worst part, you can't Google your way out of this because you can't search for questions you don't know exist. That's the trap. The industry assumes you already know what to ask. But if this is your first event, or even your third, how would you? The goal of today's video isn't to scare you. It's to give you a checklist of clarity so you can move forward without second-guessing every decision you make. You are not bad at this. You were just never handed the map. So let's start drawing one. So what are those questions? Let's break them down category by category. If you don't ask about noise ordinances before you book, your DJ is going to find out for you at 9 p.m. on your wedding night. Here's what I give every client before they tour a venue: a question bank. Not because I want them to interrogate the coordinator, but because I want them to leave that tour with clarity, not just excitement. Let's start with venue access and restrictions. What time can my vendor start setting up? And is there an extra fee for early access? I've had clients assume setup started at 8 a.m., only to find out that the venue doesn't unlock until noon, and their florist needed 4 hours to install. That's potentially a $1,500 early access fee they didn't budget for. Are there any restrictions on decor? Can we hang things from the ceilings, use open flame, or bring in our own furniture? I worked with a couple who planned an entire candlelit reception. Hundreds of candles. It was central to their vision. The venue coordinator said the bride's Pinterest board looked beautiful during the tour. Day of, the venue coordinator reminded the couple that no open flames are allowed. The venue knew, but no one asked the specific question, so no one mentioned it. Next category, hidden costs and logistics. What's included in this package and what costs extra? Breakdown, cleanup, tables, linens, plateware, glassware? Do you require event insurance? And if so, what does it need to cover? Is there a noise curfew or noise ordinance I need to be aware of? That last one is huge. I've seen DJs have to cut music at 9 p.m. because the venue is in a residential area with strict noise laws, and the couple didn't find out until the week before the wedding. These aren't nitpicky questions. These are the questions that determine whether your day flows smoothly or becomes a scramble to solve problems you didn't know existed. And here's the thing, good venues expect these questions. They want you to ask them because the last thing they want is a panicked bride 3 weeks out realizing there's no loading zone for the caterer's truck. Bad venues, they get defensive. They make you feel like you're being difficult. That reaction tells you everything. One more category, vendor coordination and day of realities. How does load in and load out work? How much time do we have? Where can vendors park? And is there a loading zone? Do you provide day of coordination? And if so, what does it actually include? That last question is critical because day of coordination can mean anything from we'll unlock the doors and point people in the right direction to we will manage your entire timeline and handle vendor communication. If you're expecting the second and getting the first, your wedding day is going to feel chaotic, and you won't realize it until it's too late to hire someone else. Ask now. Get it in writing. Move forward with confidence. Why it looks perfect isn't enough. Now, let's talk about why the Instagram aesthetic isn't the whole picture. That venue looks flawless in photos. But did you ask if there's power access for your band? Because your coordinator is about to tell you there isn't. Venues are designed to photograph beautifully. That's their job. But a beautiful space doesn't automatically mean it's functional for your event. I've seen clients fall in love with a space because of its aesthetic, then realize a little too close to the wedding day that there's no bridal suite, or that the bathrooms are a 5-minute walk away, or that the parking situation is actually a disaster. One of my clients booked a historic mansion. Stunning, absolutely magazine worthy. She could already see the photos in her head. She had assured her band that there was more than enough power access. They showed up and discovered there were only 2 power outlets in the entire ballroom on different circuits. They had to run extension cords across the dance floor and dial back half their equipment. The venue didn't hide this. It just never came up because she didn't know it was something she needed to ask about. This is where the distinction between looking good and working well becomes critical. Your job during a venue tour isn't just to imagine your wedding there. It's to imagine the logistics of your wedding there. Where will your vendors set up? Where will your guests park? What happens if it rains? Is there climate control, or will everyone be sweating or freezing? These are not romance killers, they're reality checks. And reality checks are what keep your wedding day from becoming a logistical nightmare. Asking these questions doesn't mean you're being difficult. It means you're being smart. And if a venue makes you feel bad for asking them, walk away, because that's a preview of how they'll handle problems when they arise. The venues worth working with will respect your diligence. They'll appreciate that you're taking this seriously because they know a prepared client is a happy client. By the way, if you're currently touring venues and realizing there are a lot of questions you didn't even know you were supposed to ask, I created something to help with that. It is a free venue sourcing guide that includes the exact question checklist I give my clients, along with a comparison worksheet you can bring to venue tours, so you can evaluate spaces clearly instead of just going off emotion. You can download it using the link and the description below. Here's what most people don't realize about venue contracts. You're signing a contract that protects the venue, not you. Here's what to look for before you sign. Contracts are not neutral documents. They are written to protect the business, not the client. This doesn't mean venues are out to get you. It just means you need to be the one advocating for yourself. Here's what to ask before you sign. What's your cancellation or rescheduling policy, and how far out does it apply? If something goes wrong on the day, power outage, plumbing issue, structural problem, what's your backup plan? And is any of my payment refundable? Are there any additional fees that aren't listed in this contract? I had a client who paid a $5,000 deposit on a venue. 3 months later, she had a family emergency and needed to reschedule. The contract said no refunds, no rescheduling, no exceptions. She lost the entire deposit. Now, could she have prevented that? Maybe not, but she could have asked the question up front and decided if that risk was truly worth it. I always tell clients, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. Verbal promises are not enforceable. If a coordinator tells you, "Oh, we're flexible on setup time," ask them to add that flexibility to the contract in writing. If they say, "We always let couples do a day after brunch on the patio," get it in the contract. Because 3 months from now, when you're deep in planning mode and you reference that conversation, there's a very real chance the coordinator will say, "I don't remember saying that." And without documentation, you have no leverage. This isn't about being paranoid. It's about making sure that the version of the day you are imagining is the version you're legally entitled to. Read every line. Ask questions about anything that's unclear. And if the venue won't adjust language that feels unfair or one-sided, that's information too. Because the contract is the relationship. And if the contract doesn't protect you, the relationship won't either. The real cost of rushing decisions. Let's talk about what happens when you feel pressured to book quickly. That venue coordinator just told you there's only one Saturday left this year. Here's why you should still take 24 hours to think about it. The event industry thrives on urgency. This date won't last. We have another couple looking this Saturday. If you don't put down a deposit today, it's gone. And I get it. Scarcity is real. Popular venues do book up, but urgency should never override clarity. If a venue or a vendor is pressuring you to make a decision before you've had time to ask your questions, review the contract, or even sleep on it, that's a red flag. I tell every client, if they're the right fit, they'll still be the right fit in 48 hours. Some of the biggest regrets I've seen come from clients who felt rushed into signing because they were afraid of losing their date. And then 6 weeks later, they're discovering costs they didn't know about, or rules they weren't told, or coordination gaps that were never addressed. One of my clients signed a contract during her venue tour because the coordinator said 2 other couples were coming that afternoon. She felt the pressure. She didn't want to lose the date. 2 months later, she realized the venue required her to use their in-house catering, which cost 40% more than the caterer she'd already been talking to. It was in the contract, she just didn't read it carefully because she was rushing. Here's the truth about urgency. It's a sales tactic, and it works. But your wedding is not an impulse buy. It's one of the biggest financial and emotional investments you'll make. And you deserve time to think, time to process, time to ask follow-up questions. Give yourself permission to slow down. A good venue partner will respect that. A great one will encourage it. If they make you feel like you're losing out by taking time to think, walk away. because that pressure doesn't stop at the contract. It shows up on your wedding day too. Clarity is a form of self-protection. This is the mindset shift I want you to walk away with today. Asking questions before you book isn't being difficult. It's being smart, and it's the only way to protect your budget and your sanity. The most empowered clients I work with are the ones who come to the table with questions, not apologies. They don't feel bad about asking for clarity. They don't worry about seeming high maintenance. Because here's the truth. Asking questions is not the same as being difficult. Asking questions is how you make sure you are not blindsided later. And the vendors and venues worth working with, they want you to ask questions because they'd rather address concerns upfront than deal with confusion or frustration later. I had a client who was nervous about asking her venue coordinator for a detailed breakdown of setup logistics. She didn't want to seem like she didn't trust them. I told her, if they're good at their job, they will appreciate that you are taking this seriously. And if they get defensive, that's your answer. She asked. The coordinator sent her a 12-page document with timelines, floor plans, vendor contact info, and contingency plans. That's a professional. That's someone who wants you to feel confident. If someone makes you feel bad for asking questions or dismisses your concerns as overreacting, that tells you everything you need to know about how they'll handle problems on your actual event day. Because the way they respond to you now is the way they'll respond to you when something goes wrong. And let's face it, something always goes wrong. That's events. The question is, do you have a partner who will problem solve with you, or one who will make you feel like you are the problem? Clarity is care for yourself, for your budget, for your peace of mind. And you are allowed to move through this process feeling informed and confident, not confused and hoping for the best. So ask the questions, read the contract, take your time, because the venues and vendors who are right for you will respect that. And the ones who don't, you just saved yourself months of stress by walking away. So here's what we covered today. Regret in planning almost always comes from missing information, not bad taste. The questions you don't know to ask are the ones that cost you the most in time, money, and stress. A beautiful venue isn't enough if it doesn't work for your event logistically. Contracts protect the venue, not you. So read them carefully and get everything in writing. Urgency is a sales tactic. Give yourself permission to slow down and ask your questions. And finally, clarity is a form of self-protection. Asking questions is not being difficult, it's being smart.